Hello and welcome to I'm a Terrible Feminist. I'm Theresa.
And I'm David.
And we just found out that...
Today
on our way to lunch that this month is...
Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
And guess what we're talking about today?
Domestic violence. And so there is probably an important thing to say that if you are someone who has been abused, this could be a triggering episode for you, and we want to make sure that you are okay.
Warned.
Yeah, and warned, and that we have a disclaimer and a trigger warning. If you can't listen to the episode, that's okay. We're not going to get mad.
We will not fault you for choosing not to listen to this episode.
Correct.
So, with that in mind, David did not misspeak last episode when he was like, I think we're talking about domestic abuse.
Which I said, I think, 3 different times.
And the reason for that is that I sent him a video that my father had actually sent me. It was a TED Talk by Leslie Morgan Steiner. And it was actually kind of funny to get this from my father because my father is not the sort of person that really talks about things.
Mm-hmm.
He does things and he is pretty poor at expressing himself, and he's a lot better than his father, who was not awesome about it. My father and I have had some moments in our life where conversation has not gone super well because he's emotionally constipated. Anyway.
That sounds painful.
I think so. I think it's a lot easier to be in tune with one's emotions and just kind of like identify them and deal with them as they come. But
he needs emotional fiber.
He does. He needs emotional fiber.
I work at a health food store. I know all about that.
Oh, David. Anyway, it was an awesome gesture getting this talk from my father. He sent it to me, my mother, and my 2 sisters, which pleased me because I was like, yay, feministic behavior from a man in my life. But the important thing about this talk is that I watched it all the way through, and Leslie began her talk, I suppose Ms. Steiner?
How I'm sure she's happy with you referring to her in any way you would like. That isn't degenerative and derogatory.
I will refer to her by her last name. I've noticed that a lot lately at school, where people will call women by their first names and men by their last names, and I'm like, we should pick one. We should pick one here, because just because I'm a woman doesn't mean you need to be more familiar with me. It's not how life works.
Whatever you say, baby doll. Oh no! Don't hit me, please.
No! Oh gosh, I can't. You're getting me derailed.
Sorry, you were saying about Miss Steiner.
No, we have to do this because I've noticed that I'm hitting my male friends and not my female friends. Like, not in a mean way, but in a hilarious. And I want to stop.
In the way where friends sometimes hit each other as a way of in a soft, playful way.
Yeah, in the playful way, but the fact that I'm doing it to one gender of friend and not the other is interesting. Anyway,
I'll actually have an interesting connection to that later.
Okay, cool. We'll come back to it. Leslie Morgan Steiner and her talk. She mentions that she did not see herself as a victim. She is a survivor of domestic abuse. Is that how we should phrase that?
Yeah, I think so.
She's as a survivor of domestic abuse. She said that she did not see herself as a victim. She was not in a situation in which she was being domestically abused. She was a very strong woman with a very troubled partner.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a perspective that I had never considered.
Mm-hmm. And she wanted to help her partner.
She did. She wanted to help her partner get better, and she felt that she needed to stay. And the question that we often ask when we consider domestic abuse is, why don't they leave?
And that's the wrong question.
It's the wrong question.
The question that we should be asking is, why don't they stop?
The abusers.
The abuser.
Why
doesn't the abuser stop?
Yes.
Gender-neutral pronouns makes it difficult to figure out who we're talking about.
I end up using epitaphs like the abuser.
Yeah, the survivor. So there are a few signs of emotional abuse. I looked them up when I had some friends who... We changed a lot of names in this episode just because we figured the people... Sorry, dads.
Yeah, dads, you're the only ones that...
They're the only ones that we're going to speak freely of. Both of us... I feel like we both have fairly decent relationships with our father.
Yeah, I mean, I love my father, and we have a good relationship. I don't think he will mind me airing past grievances for the sake of progress.
My dad would just say, sorry, because that's what my dad does. But anyway, so I have these 2 friends, Peyton and Robbie. Names have been changed.
Are we going to define?
That's what I was going to say. And when they were having trouble, I looked up what are the signs of emotional abuse. Or do we want to define just abuse in general first?
I think we should define just abuse in general first. Because we need to make it very clear that anyone can be an abuser or a survivor, a victim, someone who is abused.
Yeah. And so one of the definitions I found that I really liked was that abuse is something where an abuser is someone who wants to control or degenerate someone through physical, emotional, or sexual means. Yeah. And the reason we split up sexual and physical is because it can be physical without being sexual, even though it cannot be sexual without being physical. It's like a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square.
Not a square, yes.
Math, geometry, what?
Woo! But those are the 3 types of abuse that we're going to talk about. And I just want to say, they're all abuse. Mm-hmm. None of them are better or worse than the other.
We're not trying to say this person's experience is more real than this person's experience because they had this type of abuse happen. That's sort of a bullshit cherry-picking thing.
Yeah, and we're not going to do that.
Nope.
Not at all. But those are the 3 types of abuse, kinds, like...
that we're going to be discussing.
Discussing, yes.
Yeah. And so, emotional abuse?
I think that is where we wanted to start, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, when there were some problems going on between Peyton and Robbie, I was really concerned about Peyton. I looked up signs of emotional abuse from this website called healthcentral.com. I found some things that might be signs of an emotionally abusive relationship. And I wanted to bring those up with Peyton and see what she thought about them. And this,
because you were worried.
Because I was worried about her, and I looked at it, and the signs were that your partner isolates you, which Robbie did, was verbally abusive, which she had told me about times when he would call her names and make her feel bad. Would blame others for it. A lot of times Robbie would say that it was her friends trying to pull her away, and that was a problem for me. Alcohol and drug use is one of the warning signs, and it doesn't mean that if you smoke pot or drink that you are an abuser, but they can go hand in hand with people who have with abusive behavior. Yeah. Instills fear. For this one, the website said something about, like, do they have guns in the house? Do they show you the guns? Do they make sure that you know that they have the gun? I never got the feeling that Peyton felt like Robbie was trying to do that, but Robbie does own firearms and is into them. Punishes you for time away. Peyton would go out to dance events, and then Robbie would give her the cold shoulder and be like, why are you doing this? Like, why aren't you, like, inviting me with you when Robbie doesn't like to do those things? Expects you to be a servant. This is one that I didn't see so much happening. Is extremely jealous. This was definitely a thing. When Robbie first started dating Peyton, he was very concerned about my relationship with her and was very mistrustful of that. And then continued to be so even after he had said, no, I'm fine, and then switched and turned out that he was still really worried about it and just didn't say anything. And then controls you through emotions, which is in general the manipulation of why did you do this and not tell me? Why are you treating me this way, when it's just that someone is trying to live their life and be happy. And the last one was, it can be physically abusive. Oftentimes physical and emotional abusive relationships go hand in hand. There's
also, I don't think these ones are mentioned, these are things that I have noticed.
Yeah.
In not necessarily ones that I've been in, but in situations that have been abusive that I have witnessed, either like actually firsthand or like in media, is the belittlement of the victim and their opinion, calling people silly, telling them that they're overreacting,
gaslighting,
taking away the victim's power, essentially, saying, well, you're too small to be able to do that, like, you're wrong, you're a little crazy, you're not actually in control of your faculties, diminishing them to the point where they don't think that they are capable of doing anything. Those are a lot of the signs of emotional abuse.
Yeah, and so when I brought these up with Peyton, my main goal was that I wanted to make sure that I supported her in whatever decision that she made. I wasn't trying to be like, no, get out of this relationship now, even though I would like her to be out of the relationship.
You can't make those decisions for someone.
Yeah, and like ultimately it's her call, and I feel like it would be a worse decision for me to be like, well, then you're out of my life, because I'm not feeling like my life is being... Like, I don't feel like it's becoming a problem for me personally.
Yeah.
And it's not hurting my emotional health that she is in that relationship.
Yeah. Steiner in her talk actually goes over some of the signs that we've mentioned.
Yeah.
The isolation, apparently her partner did get a firearm and show it to her, and actually they slept with it under their pillow.
And he put it to her head.
Yeah, he did some terrible things. But also, she mentions that people in those situations really need the support of the people around them, and like to cut them off or say, well, you need to get out of this or I will not be here, is to further hurt the victim, actually.
Yeah.
If my sister was in an abusive relationship but she wouldn't leave, it would still be my duty as her sister, as her friend, to be there for her. I mean, unless it was problematic to me and my health in some way, but I wouldn't want to abandon her to that. And if me leaving, like, as an ultimatum would make that worse,
it seems like
I would want to do.
And it's a tough thing to figure out, and there's no right answer.
No, it's difficult to navigate.
Yeah.
we don't have the answers. There is no like mode of conduct for
this is what you do.
This is how this is handled and how things are done, because abuse itself is a perversion of something that should have been good. And this is very case by case, and if you're in doubt, I would, like, if you are in a situation, or you are the friend of someone who's in a situation, or you think that you might be someone causing a situation, I would urge you to seek help.
Yeah, counseling is always good. Talking to trusted friends and people who advise you is a really good choice. And yeah, getting help.
Because, I mean, should I talk about Jordan at this point?
Sure.
In time?
Miss J.
Miss J.
We had a lot of fun coming up with names.
We did. I'm trying to remember them all. So, speaking of as we stated, anyone can be a victim, anyone can be an abuser. I never thought that I was capable of abusing someone. And this happened for all of a week. Because I've talked to a lot of counselors, but I was in a relationship with Ms. J for a month, and then Ms. J and I split up, and it was very hurtful. I was in an unfortunate place. A bunch of my family members had died, and my family wasn't taking it very well, and we were all kind of grieving in our own way and not being very supportive of each other's grief, and so I didn't feel very loved. And so when I started dating Ms. J, it was like the world was in bloom, and of course it was spring as well, so everything was actually in bloom.
Perfect time for Twitterpation.
Yeah, exactly. Totally Twitter-pated. And I had kind of thrown myself off of the emotional bridge and been like, I will trust you with my heart, even though this is very hard for me. And so when she left me, it was very difficult for me to be around her anymore, and we didn't talk for the rest of the term. And then last day of the term, she calls me up and says, hey, can we hang out? Like, I'd like to see you before you run off, like, to home forever, because I was graduating and leaving.
Yeah.
And I was like, sure. You know, whatever. Except at that point, I didn't feel important, and I figured out after hanging out with Ms. J for a day that I was still very important to her.
Yeah.
And that I could upset her and comfort her and make it better. And so I started doing that just to feel special, like to feel like I mattered. And that was coming from my own emotional issues and not from her.
Yeah.
I was taking it out on her. And after noticing what I was doing and talking to a few people, David included, actually. David was there for this. I went, okay. And actually, David said something to me that was very, very wise at the time. Where I asked if I was abusing her, like if what I was doing actually qualified as abuse. And he went, well, if you think it does, it's probably better to quit. Like, even if it isn't, it's probably better to just cut it off and make sure his behavior stops, even because you're worried about it.
Yeah.
And that, I think, was the best advice he could have given someone in my position.
Thanks.
Just because, like, I think I was trying to figure out what I was doing and if I was a little nuts or not, or like if my behavior was acceptable. And I think often you need to judge yourself on your own standard.
Yeah.
Like, if you can't live with something,
maybe you shouldn't be doing it.
Maybe you shouldn't be doing it. Ms. J and I had to just simply cut off relations because it wasn't working. It wasn't working, and I'm not sure if there are ways for abusers and victims to reconcile with each other. And like, it was all of a week. I don't think this excuses it.
Yeah.
But to be able to notice that behavior and stop it is something that, like, I'm appreciative that I have the ability to do.
I was gonna say, I think there are a lot of documented cases of people who have been abusers and the survivors of that abuse being able to come back together. But the ultimate thing is that reconciliation is something that is up to the survivor.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Actually, because they are the ones who...
They have a lot of trauma involved in it. And if the abuser is really reformed, they're going to respect that decision.
Yeah. You're right about that. And to this day, I respect Ms. J's decision. Like, we had one interaction since then in which I asked her a question concerning my writing, actually, because I wanted to. You wanted to I wrote a story about us, actually. It was...
Not like a non-fiction story that was like, man, look, this is kind of a shitty situation I was in.
Yeah, it was memoir. It was actually about how our relationship started, because I felt it was very encouraging to bisexual people, especially people who were just discovering that they were bisexual. And the way our relationship started was beautiful. I mean, I have a lot of fairy tale beginnings in my life. Not so much at the ending.
Fairy tale endings are pretty dark.
I love them. But regardless, the point of that story is that I never thought I would ever abuse anyone, and I did. Like, you may think that you never would, but that doesn't mean that you never will. People end up in dark places. And like, it's not that I wanted to hurt Ms. J, it's that I wanted to feel important.
I had not the exact same thing happen. I don't know. I had another thing where I had broken up with someone or been broken up with by my partner Veronica, who we've been seeing each other for a very long time. And I was just so hung up on this great male privilege idea that I was owed something for my pain.
Examples of male privilege.
that I had earned it for my suffering. And that she owed me favors. And so, like, if I needed help moving something, she would have to do it because I had been wronged so terribly because I was such a good boyfriend. And oh, could she leave me? I had a huge stick up my ass.
I'm so glad you grew up.
Well, you knew me when this was happening.
I did.
You thought I was a great person all the same.
Well, no, I didn't. I was unhappy with the way Veronica had ended your relationship. I did not feel you were owed. I was simply upset with the pain that I just it sucks when people cause each other pain.
It does. And eventually, luckily, I got over myself, which was really nice. And Veronica was extraordinarily gracious in continuing to be in contact with me. And we still talk every now and then, and that's pretty good. And I feel like we have a decent relationship. We don't talk as much as we used to, but we aren't dating anymore, so that's fine. And so it's a nice thing, but it was really tough to realize that I was in this place where I was taking advantage of my relationship and emotionally manipulating someone into doing things for me in a way that was really unhealthy and abusive. Yeah, for both of us. It was really not an okay thing. And it sort of started right before we broke up. And like as things were going and I could tell they were going the wrong way, I wanted her to stay. And I just went about it in like the shittiest way possible. Yeah.
Because there's nothing wrong with wanting someone to stay so long as you express it in a healthy way and respect their wishes when they make their decision.
And I have a thing in my notes that I'm just going to mention every time this comes up. So Theresa and I both have these very different experiences, and they're different things where we were sort of abusers in things, and even though they're different, they're still both really bad. We're not trying to. We're not having a pissing contest over who's the best abuser.
I'd totally win that contest. No.
the point.
Not a good contest to
point.
Win.
No, it's not. The point we want to make is all types of abuse are bad, and that's just the thing that I'm going to try to make sure I continually re-emphasize
all
throughout
types
this.
of abuse. And actually, I think that the little ones are worse because they're more common, they're more pervasive, they linger, they're accepted.
I'm just going to go all types are bad, even like accepted, unaccepted, bad.
You're right. It's all bad. It's all bad, and anyone can be a victim. Anyone can be an abuser.
And sometimes,
And just because you do abuse someone does not necessarily make you a terrible person. It makes your action bad.
And you can hopefully stop doing those actions.
I mean, David and I apparently we're labeling ourselves this way right now, and
yeah. And sometimes the thing to do is break up, and that's what you got to do.
You and I are both calling ourselves abusers right now.
We have people who have abused others. I am very uncomfortable calling myself an abuser, even if it's an accurate label.
And I think that is one of the biggest things, is that people don't seek help because they're unwilling to admit that sort of a thing. That they have abused someone.
Yeah.
And I suppose I'm not uncomfortable with the title simply because it shows that I have acknowledged that there is a problem. And that, like, in a way, I am stronger for having, like, confronted it.
Yeah.
And dealt with that and realized that what I was doing was not okay. And I think there is something brave about going, I think I am doing this thing and I think it is bad and I think I need help. And we have a very interesting reaction to people who do that. And it's very negative.
Yeah.
Actually. And I can understand that because they have done something horrible.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when behavior is negatively rewarded, people don't practice it.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is not to, like, celebrate an abuser. This is not what I want to do. But what I'm saying is that we should not respond negatively to someone. We may not need to respond positively, but maybe we just don't need to respond.
Well, but when someone needs help, you give them.
You
it's
give
a good
them the
help.
help.
And if the thing is
someone comes forward
I'm abusing, I think I want to stop.
If someone comes forward and says, I think I am an abuser, there is a behavior that I'm performing that, like, I want to stop, I want help. I think that is not something that should be seen negatively.
Yeah.
That is good. Let's get you some.
Let's get you some help. So now, moving on to physical abuse. Before this, Theresa and I were discussing different types of relationships where abuse can happen, and we were focusing a whole lot on romantic relationships and partners, and then we're like, this is all types of abuse that includes family abuse as well. And we both had some stories about our father. I was the lucky one in my family. I'm the youngest. And so I got the tail end of my father's abusive streak. And my father now, as I said at the beginning, we have a very good relationship. And he was raised in a different social context than I was. And the things that he thought were appropriate are not things that I think are appropriate. The main thing I can remember that was beyond spanking would be that sometimes he would destroy some of our things. He would, like, take a poster and throw it in the fire. Jeez. There was one time he was very, very firm about us eating all of our food, and there was one time he burned toast while making it, but was like, you're still gonna eat it. And he tried to force my brother to eat this burned, inedible toast, and, like, it cut his mouth.
Yeah.
And that was the point where, like, my mother was like, look, you either need to get help or I'm leaving. And my father got help. He got a mood stabilizing medication, and he went to counseling, and things got better, which is a great thing. And not all stories run that way.
Yeah.
And it was really nice that mine did.
Well, I'm proud of your father for, like, getting help and doing that, because my father actually refused. So my father and I did not have the best of relationships growing up. He continued to spank me all the way through middle school. And my middle school was kind of long. We went, it was 5th to 8th.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, all the way to 8th grade. And when I was an 8th grader, I became a black belt in Taekwondo. And the day that my father stopped beating me, because since 6th grade, I'd been calling it that.
Yeah.
I was like, you're beating me. And he refused that term as well, actually. He was like, no, I'm not, I'm spanking you. He came at me one day after I had received my black belt, and I went, if you touch me, I will break your arm. And that's when it all stopped. Like, but I had to be big enough to basically make good on my threat. Yeah. Essentially. My father didn't stop until I was big enough to hurt him. Yeah. Which is a thing that I will never forget. Yeah. Like, that's just is a bit much. And after that, he did break things instead. They were not always things of mine. He never... Well, there was a moment where he messed up a shelf of mine. But he broke our phone because he threw it on the ground at one point in time. Just, like, intimidation and things like that. Yeah. And I think it was worse for my sisters, actually. Because I just tried not to upset him. Whereas I didn't think some of the things my father wanted us to do made sense. His word was not law to me, which was how he grew up. I blame my father's father for a lot of the issues that my father and I had. Because, like you said, from the past, different ideals. But we would fight, essentially, and if he couldn't win verbally, he would win physically, is what would happen there. And he didn't go to count. He went to one session and then quit. I'm fortunate that, like, I was taught to defend myself and am tall enough and strong enough to be a threat to a full-grown man. But if I hadn't been, like, that is not a situation that I think would have ended well. Yeah. Unfortunately. I think my father's better now. I think he has a better rein on his emotions. It also helps that I'm not 15 anymore. Although I wasn't 15. That stopped when I was, like, 13. There we are. Yeah. Time-wise, I'm like, hang on.
Hold on. How old am I?
Math. Am I any good at that? No, wait. I went to school for creative writing.
Theresa and I determined that we're actually getting old earlier today.
Yeah, we did. That was a conversation. Yep. But, still spanking a child of 13, it's a blurry line anyway. Like, I don't think spanking is a thing that should happen.
Me neither.
It teaches children that it's okay to hit people if you think they're wrong.
And that pain is an acceptable punishment.
Yeah. Those are not okay things.
Yeah.
And then linking linking off of, I'm not sure if we kept that part. Are we going to keep the part about hitting friends? No,
Oh.
we're not going to mention that, are we?
I think we mentioned it at the beginning.
We did mention it at the beginning.
We talked about it. Oh, wait, there was... What was the link I was going to do? Oh, hitting friends. Oh, I was going to... So, this is another part about Peyton and Robbie, actually.
Oh.
I also talked to Robbie, and I was like, look, I'm really concerned about this. Like we spent the last few years becoming friends, and, like, something is not okay. Like, maybe you should get help.
Uh-huh.
And he...
Didn't respond well?
No, he did not respond well, but he basically was like, fuck you, I've been getting counseling, like, I'm working on my own shit as best as I can, I'm trying to get support from my family. His family, as far as I can tell, supports the behavior that he does, and his friends are like, they're like, roughhousing is the thing to do, and he comes from an abusive background. And so I'm like, like, I feel like that's the wrong place to be getting your advice from, but it's, it's not really my place to be like, I'm holier than thou, and I'm going to tell you how to live your life. But I was just like, look, you're my friend, and I'm concerned about the way that you and my friend Peyton are behaving with each other, and it's a problem. And the thing that he said that really irked me was that I was wrong about who was abusing who.
Whoa, excuse me?
And so I went and I talked to Peyton, and I was like, hey, so this is what Robbie said, and, like, this is the text message I have from him.
I just want to pause you for a second. I know Peyton as well.
Yeah.
And Peyton wouldn't hurt a fly, which is why I say that.
She's just very gentle, yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, what on earth? Like, can you speak to this at all? Like, can you help me understand, like, is Robbie trying to, like, push me away from you and, like, make me start blaming you and being like, it's your fault, you're an abuser, and have that negative reaction?
Uh-huh.
I'm like, what is the deal? And she was like, well, his background. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, play fighting. It's like, yeah. And she's like, he didn't tell me for, like, a year that he wasn't okay with that sort of play hitting. Like, that really bothered him, and it really, like, pushed him over the edge. And he just didn't communicate it. And
I have a link. I do.
You have a link.
So, I mentioned Taekwondo, and that's how abuse stopped in my family.
Yeah.
I am concerned about hitting my male friends and them not communicating to me.
Yeah.
And one of the things I noticed when I was practicing Taekwondo, I'm not practicing right now, but my female partners, whenever we would spar or do drills, wrist locks or throws or anything like that, they would communicate to me, that was a little too rough, could you be a little more gentle, like, careful here, like, I learned to be gentle with my female partners because they asked for it. It was acceptable societally for them to say so.
That's a tongue twister.
Can I say I have a skilled tongue? Anyway.
I'm leaving it in.
Damn it! Anyway, my male partners never communicated any sort of pain to me. Ever. I'm not sure if that's just because, like, they weren't bothered.
Yeah.
Because I enjoy a little bit of roughhousing. Like, it's not worth it if I don't come out with a few scrapes, honestly. I'm like, I really get the blood pumping. Woo! In a sparring sort of way. In a sexual sort of way.
Maybe you'll take up Taekwondo and meet someone. Again. Like, take it up again and practice it more.
No, just meet someone again. Anyway.
Maybe you'll eat someone.
Maybe I will eat someone.
You'll be Hannibal.
Maybe I'll meet Hannibal in Taekwondo class? Dude. No, he's in France with his weird therapist.
Oh, spoilers. I don't know what's going on.
No, well, now you're even more confused.
Shit.
Trigger. Spoilers. Triggers and spoilers. We're just...
I think everyone knows by now that spoilers happen.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We have been. I'm so sorry, everyone. What was I saying? Oh, but my male partners wouldn't communicate that with me, and I'm not sure if it's because it didn't bother them, or if it's because they didn't think they were allowed to.
Yeah.
So yeah, connections.
Yeah. That's good. Moving on to sexual abuse.
We're going to talk about BDSM for a second.
Yeah, we have a BDSM caveat.
We do. We have a little caveat there. Essentially, like, we are talking about a lot of forms of abuse, and we don't want anyone who practices BDM safely and
BDSM.
Yeah, that's what I said, isn't it?
You said BDM.
BDSM.
Like EDM, electric dance music.
We don't want anyone who practices BDSM safely and consensually to, like, feel guilty when we talk about this, because we're not talking about you.
Yeah, and shifty shades of grey.
50 shades
The 50 shades of grey is bullshit, so...
So, whatever.
You know that we're not talking about you.
We're not talking about you. Speaking of, safely and consensually, though.
Yes. Consent can always be withdrawn at any time. There are some people who are like, well, how can a spouse rape their spouse by the other spouse not consenting? Just because you have given consent once does not mean that you've given consent for all time.
And just because you've taken marriage vows, that is not, like, an all-pass consent form. That is not I've decided to spend the rest of my life with you, and therefore I consent
to
the rest
anything.
of my life.
Yeah.
Like, that's not how marriage vows work. Or even, like, personal vows to, like, stay, like, any sort of commitment does not become consent.
Yeah, absolutely. So, with sexual abuse, I have a friend who I haven't talked to for a long time.
Which friend is this?
The name we have for the podcast is Bridget. We had a thing right after Veronica and I were no longer together. I was feeling pretty lonely, and I want someone to be around. But I needed things to go slow. And initially, I didn't communicate that too terribly well. And so I was like I should have said something. Because things moved kind of fast between us. And I was like, I'm not sure how I feel about that. And so I let her know. I said, look, I can't go from 0 to 60 in 10 seconds. Like, I just cannot do that. I need to establish more of a physical, like we need to establish a physical relationship, because we already were friends. And so I was like, we can do sexual things together, but like, I needed there to be a workup. I couldn't just like be talking and then all of a sudden she's touching my junk. That was not an okay thing for me. Like, it was just, there was things just happened faster than I wanted them to happen. And so she was very receptive, and she was like, sure, of course, like, we can do that whatever way you want. And then it didn't happen. Like, it was just, like, she said it, and it felt like she was just trying to appease me, and then things just went straight into what she wanted to get. She verbally agreed and then didn't follow through.
Disregarded you,
And so after that I had a talk, and I was like, like, that really made me uncomfortable. Like, you still aren't listening to me. Like, I have boundaries. This is what's going on.
Oh, speaking of double standard.
So this is also, a lot of times people see abuse in general as something that men do to women. Yeah? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I can't even count on all my fingers and toes, by which I mean I would need 100 more or so. The amount of times women have looked at me when I've had bruises from sparring and been, like, worried.
Yeah, and said, sweetie, what's going on?
Yeah, I've had women come up to me and be like, are you okay? I went to school once with a bruise from, my dad and I played softball, and I had a black eye, and
How'd you get that? My dad gave it to me.
Yeah, essentially, my teachers were worried, and I didn't realize what I was saying was, like, a trigger.
Thing, yeah.
Yeah, so that was... But anyway, continue, Bridget.
Well, and so for this, for the double standard, no, it's cool. For the double standard, there's often an assumption that men want sex all the time, and that's what they're into. And so far, I think I've yet to date someone whose sex drive was not higher than mine, which is probably more information than the listeners are interested in.
But Bridget took things too far.
Well, yeah, but the point of that is that men can also be the victim of sexual assault, and anyone can be the victim of can be abused. Anyone can be abused, even if you're male or female or transgender. Anything that you want.
And it seems kind of invisible, because whereas my bruises are noticed in public, men's are not.
Yeah.
Because it's assumed, boys will be boys.
Yeah.
They're gonna, rough and tumble, which is maybe part of why they don't communicate, ow, that hurt, please be a little more gentle, don't hit me. Like, we also seem to be little women in that way, in a sense. Like, the hitting of male friends that women do is like, oh, well, she's not strong enough to hurt him, and he's, manly enough to take it. Which... Just stop thinking those things, people.
Abuse is bad. All types of abuse are bad.
All types of abuse.
And so, unfortunately, Bridget and I don't really we haven't talked since that happened. That's been, I don't even know how long ago it was now. We just haven't talked. I think she's realized that she crossed a line and is waiting for me to initiate contact, and
which is how she should be responding.
Yeah, it's really good that she's doing that, and I'm glad that she figured it out. I don't know if I'm ever going to give it a shot. Like, I don't feel a lot of resentment towards her anymore, but it's just like, what's the point?
Yeah, and Bridget's not a bad person. I'm sorry, my tone of voice makes it sound like I'm upset, but, like, I'm really just more upset that these things happen to people.
Yeah.
And that people are hurt enough or confused enough, like, to do these things.
Well, and, like, since I've known her for years, like, I know that the background that she comes from, like, that's how physical and romantic relationships work. And that's how, like, she has been conditioned to respond to them. It's just everyone comes to learn about how things are in different ways, and they're not always the ways that work best for everyone else.
Which is not to say that every single abuser is hurt or confused. There are ones who really just want control and to hurt people.
Yeah.
Like, there are bad people out there. And abusers are not one kind of person. They're people, like everyone else.
One of my friends said something to me that I thought was really funny because she was talking to her sister about someone who she had just started dating. And
David just pointed to himself and mouthed, me?
Maybe. And so the sister said, the thing is that there are so many different types of douchebag in the world that there's not a category for everyone. You just have to, like, meet them and find out which douchebag they are. And then you're like, that kind of douchebag. Not going to be around you anymore. It can be like that for finding out if someone's an abuser in a much less comical way.
Mm-hmm. Much less comical way.
Much less comical.
Indeed.
That's all I got.
I think that's everything we had to say.
Mm-hmm.
This has been a very difficult episode for me. I'm feeling very exhausted.
I'm tired.
Yeah. So I hope that this was helpful
Mm-hmm.
in some ways. I'm sure it was difficult. Thank you for bearing with us.
Mm-hmm. All types of abuse are bad.
Anyone can be an abuser. Anyone can be a victim.
Mm-hmm.
Do not forget these things.
Next month, we are going to talk about Emma Watson's He for She campaign.
So much better!
And how badass she is, and how we all love Emma Watson, and how feminism is good and beautiful and for everyone.
And how that fit into it, because we've had a few listeners ask, okay, you've said that, like, it's okay for men to be feminists and that, like, they have a place in it, but we don't understand it exactly.
And also, how can men be better feminists?
Yeah, that's true.
We're going to be addressing that in a little more of a serious thing. I know I personally was a little reticent at first to do that because I was like, really? Like, this is the women's movement and you want me to talk about how men fit in? Like, just be a supporter, damn it. But I think that's a good point.
Yes, but especially the backlash that I've seen to the He for She movement, from like it's absurd and it's stupid. So we're going to talk about this.
Sounds good.
So we're going to do.
I hope you all have a great month.
See you later.